name is Cherryl Bird. I'm with Core Magazines. I thought this was the material that you sent me was quite interesting because I haven't seen any material on what the new era will look like, post-coronavirus will look like for services like salons and spas, people in the aesthetics industry. And you were suggesting that things will look quite different, and maybe businesses will have to make an extra effort to educate themselves, train their staff, and take particular precautions after the coronavirus has ended.
Yes, that's true. And really, Cheryl, there has to be two aspects to this. There's the pre-opening protocols and then the post-opening. So the beauty industry in Canada is a very lightly regulated industry. Although there are a lot of protocols in various provinces, the actual regulation in Canada is very light. And therefore, when you go from province to province, there's a tremendous difference in what the protocols or what people are doing. The coronavirus has really coalesced all of those thought processes for all the various ministries of health to think about the beauty industry now as an industry. And because our company has been supplying and educating in the infection control aspect of the industry, we've moved forward and put together very detailed pre-opening protocols and post-opening. And the reason for this is that the public are scared. They don't know what to do. The professionals haven't been educated a lot in what to do. And everyone is very confused about whether the government will have regulations or recommendations, because those will be two very different things. So in this very confused situation, we are saying that it's really important for all the professionals across Canada to realize that there are some fundamental things that they must do from now on. For example, they must educate every one of their staff in all the proper protocols of equipment, beds, chairs, tools, any implements that may be touching bodily fluids, combs and brushes, the manicure tables. All of those things have now got to be looked at individually, and they need to be studied to see what exactly should they do to make sure that they are all safe. And then they need to make sure that when the customers enter, the customers are properly communicated with as to what the protocols are for them to follow.
So I was under the impression that these services, the staff who work in these services were already trained. They have their own body associations that they have to report to in terms of cleanliness and protocols for, you know.
Unfortunately, that is not the case. In Canada, they're really, in fact, British Columbia, which had some fairly good laws some years ago, they even abandoned their rules for hairdressers. So Canada has slipped into a very, very patchwork group of not even regulations, but recommendations. Now, in the last few years, the governments have started stepping up. Ontario, for example, are starting to do proper examinations, and they are publishing on the website if you have passed or not passed. So the governments have started stepping up from an inspection perspective, but there really still isn't proper detailed regulatory protocols. So we have designed the regulatory protocols. We've set up a website called infectioncontroleducation.com. And when you go to that website, you'll be able to download all the protocols. In addition to, for example, what everyone's talking about now is tracing. We have a program there that, interestingly, Ontario had passed the law in 2017, but very few people even know about it or following it. Every time you go to a salon, nail salon, hair salon, aesthetic salon in Ontario, they're supposed to take your name and email address or phone number, just in case there's an outbreak.
Mhm.
Well, that is something that now is in our protocols for everyone in Canada, because just in case there is an outbreak, then the salon, in fact, we're putting an app out where all the salons can immediately record those people, so that if there's an outbreak in, Nanaimo, BC, or Halifax, Nova Scotia, that establishment is immediately able to give Health Canada the names of all the people who were there in that period of time. So this is now the requirement from our perspective that should be in place for the beauty industry, for them to open up and operate safely in the future. And then that will give a lot more confidence to you and me when we go to these salons. We'll feel more confident also that they are following all the proper protocols.
But is this something that they do anyways when they make an appointment to give their information to the business?
Not necessarily. And oftentimes when somebody walks in, because a lot of salons have walk-in services, they will often just take you and do your nails, or do your nails, for example, and take your money and off you go. Many salons are
especially
not
if you're paying
following
cash, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so you came up with a list of the top 5 things that salons must do in order to make it safe for not only their staff but also their clients when they come in.
Yeah, we did publish the top 5 list in the press release that we sent out. But the website, the infectioncontroleducation.com website, has literally 3 pages of detailed activities that every professional should be following and should be getting ready before they open. They should go through all of those steps before they open. Obviously, there are some, fairly obvious ones, such as disinfect all stations, sanitize the hands, put on gloves, put on masks. Those are the obvious ones, but there are a tremendous number of additional ones that are fairly voluminous when you read them, but are very necessary if you're going to follow comprehensive infection control procedures. That's why we are directing everybody to that website, so that even the public can download. There's a section for the customer. When they come in, there's a questionnaire for the customer to answer. We are recommending thermometers, for example, that take the temperature. So it's very, very comprehensive.
Do you think that that's something that businesses would willingly do? Take the temperature of somebody walking in the door, or would the client object to something like that as an invasion of privacy? Or
it's a changing landscape right now. It's really hard to know. So I'll give you an example. When taxi drivers, years ago, you'd get into a taxi and there wouldn't be anything separating you from the driver. Then as the years went by, taxis had the shield. And now we jump into a taxi and we're quite comfortable with the fact that there's a shield there. So this is going to develop. You now walk into a bank and you are not surprised to see the sneeze shields there protecting you from, or protecting the teller from you. And it's probably going to become a way of life now when you walk into every bank from now on. We anticipate that these procedures will be accepted by the public because it's in the public's best interest to accept these procedures.
So one of the things that you suggested was that in the new post-pandemic era, that there will be a surcharge because these businesses are taking extra precautions and getting extra training, spending the money to make it safer for their clients and for their staff.
If you were a salon owner and you read all the requirements for what you're going to have to do now, you'll very quickly realize that this is going to cost you quite a bit of money.
Yes.
And salons, sadly, not only are struggling or were struggling, they're going to be struggling even more after this, because the government is probably going to require distances between customers. So if, let's say, you owned a salon, a good salon, and you put 10 people through at a time, you can probably only could put 3 or 4 people through at a time now. It's going to affect your revenues pretty dramatically. And if on top of that, you're being asked to pay for all these supplies, gloves, masks, shields, et cetera, and disinfectants, the cost is going to be pretty substantial. So we are recommending that salons add what we call a safety fee, very similar to what shipping companies added as fuel surcharges, that they add a safety fee. We're recommending $5, but salons can decide whatever they want to put. And we feel the public, for the most part, will not object to paying a few dollars on top of their service when they see all the safety activities taking place. If they don't see the safety activities taking place, of course they'll object. But when they walk in and see all what the salon is doing, then we feel most of the public will be quite comfortable. I know I would be when I go to see my hairdresser. If she says there's an extra $3 or $5 fee, I would be quite happy to pay it, because
on top of the gratuity as well.
In addition to the gratuity, that's true. But surcharges in many industries are a way of life. And we believe that surcharges or safety surcharges will become necessary, because you, as the salon owner, you're going to be struggling financially on many levels. And you're going to need all the help you can get in order to survive.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the things that you suggested was that it's pretty much what's in effect right now, is the spacing within the salon. So let's say I go see my esthetician. I'm in the waiting area. You're suggesting that businesses space out the clients not only between clients, but I guess that what will happen is that they'll be having fewer appointments, essentially, if you have to space them out to make sure that people don't bump into each other, that there are not too many people in the waiting area.
Yes, it appears that when the governments of the various provinces start allowing salons to open, they're going to restrict the number of people as part of their legislation, if you will. And we just read Atlanta or Georgia just opened up, and we were reviewing the Atlanta regulations, and that was part of their regulations, requiring that you must have so many feet between each customer, that customers cannot come and sit in the waiting room. They have to wait outside in their cars or out on the street. So it's really quite onerous what the governments are thinking of doing, and rightfully so. They're obviously wanting to make sure that everybody stays safe. But part of that is going to mean that, I'll give you an example. One salon in one city has 18 employees, 18 regular staff members. There's no way they can have 18 staff members working now. They'd be doing well to have 9 staff members working. So they look at longer hours. They look at opening up on Sundays. But even then, they won't get enough, time to service everybody, because if they could take 12 customers, for example, at one time, now they can only take 4, 5, or maybe 6 customers at one time. So there's going to be a substantial financial impact on the beauty industry. And we're doing a lot of work with the various associations, helping them to figure out how to do the math so that they can not just open, but survive after their opening.
Well, in some cases, in most cases, it's close contact. It's quite unavoidable. In order to give a massage, you have to be touching the person. to cut their hair, you have to have your hands in their hair.
Well, that's your protocol then. So you'd have to sanitize on an ongoing basis. Your tools would need to be, you'd need to use hospital grade infection control products on your tools. Now, you know, the famous barbicide jar that sits in all the hairdressers. Well, that's not even used properly. You're not supposed to just put your comb into the jar. You're supposed to wash your comb, dry it, and then put it in. And you're supposed to leave it there for 10 minutes. So it's basically the protocols are not being followed even currently. But everyone, including the public, is going to become very aware. And we feel this is the right thing to do, to let the public be aware of proper protocols, so that the public can then tell the salons and ask the salons, what are you using and what products are you using? Because ultimately the education will be helpful for the entire industry.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Cherryl. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.